Hello, I'm Mike Nettleship, and this is the sixth and final part of how I made this guitar. If you haven't watched the previous parts, why not subscribe and you can watch them all before you go to this very last one. When you've watched them, I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, please give me the big thumbs up and subscribe so that you can watch other videos that I make, maybe of other things, maybe wildlife videos. I do all kinds of things. Hope you've enjoyed it, and maybe see you again sometime. Bye. I'm going to start fitting the fret wire now, and it comes curved like this, and as I've already mentioned, because I haven't got the tool to curve the neck, I'm doing a flat one, so I'm having to straighten it out, and you've got to be really careful doing that, because it bends fairly easily, but it's got to be, in my case, really flat, and it's a bit tricky. That you have to try and do it without getting any kinks in it, but I've managed to do one. I've cut a couple already, and what I'm going to do is start from the thickest end of the neck, because the theory behind that is, if I happen to cut one and by the time I've filed it down it's a little bit too short, I can use it for the next one, whereas if I work from the top and I cut one and it's a little bit too short, I've got to throw it away. Okay, so there's a bit of sense in that idea, I suppose. Now I'm going to be filing it. I'm going to sit it on, then I'm going to file it. Not going to put it bang into position, I'm going to have it sticking out a bit, but just in case I slip with the file, which is going to put a nasty little groove in the edge of the neck there, I'm going to put some masking tape to protect the edge of that on both sides. I'm going to put more than one piece on. Put 3 pieces on, I think. Because the last thing I want to do now is to spoil the neck by slipping with the file. Like I say, I've already done a couple, and I've found that it's easier to file it when it's sitting in the slot rather than just holding it in your hand. Okay, so I'll sit that just there, standing out a little bit, and the last thing you want is a sharp edge on this, where you're going to be cutting your fingers as you slide it over. So I'm going to make sure that's okay. File all the edges down. It's fiddly, but it's got to be done. And just when you're filing it, the piece that actually goes into the wood, I'm not sure what they call that, the tang, the little bit with the little grips on, probably best to just file that so that it's back a bit at the end, not exactly square, just back a little bit, because when this is all done I'll be going down the edges putting little bits of filler in so that it's nice and smooth, so make sure that the bottom bit of that isn't sticking out. Okay, now I want to mark it and cut it to length. Now you can get special tools for doing everything on building guitars, but I've tried to use what tools I've got as much as possible. I've had to buy some, which has cost quite a bit, but I can use those for doing other jobs anyway. If you remember, I bought a planer. So now I want to cut this to size. Now you can get a special tool for cutting it to size, but hey, I've got some wire cutters, so why buy a special tool? So if I put that in there now, so that it's just where I want it to be, I want it to be a fraction shorter, so just a little, I don't know, a millimetre or so short, and just going to get a felt tip pen and just put a tiny mark just there where I want to cut it. Okay, there we go. So now I'll get just my normal run-of-the-mill wire cutters and snip it off. See how we're looking? Okay, yep, that's ideal. Just slightly long. So now I'll put, that's the side I filed down before, swap it round, put the side that I've just cut into there, and file it shape. Right, that feels about the right size. So now I'll just round the edges. And I'm just going to get a little bit of very fine sandpaper just to take off any little sharp bits, and also to get rid of the file marks from the end of it. Now all these methods that I'm showing you in this video are just my ideas. I'm sure you'll find better or quicker or both ways of doing things, but like I mentioned, this is the first guitar I've made, so I'm sort of making it up as I go along, hoping that the end product will be okay. Well, that's one fret ready to be put in, and what I'm going to do is knock it in with a rubber hammer. Anybody who's made guitars before and who might be watching this will probably cringe at my methods, but there you go. So that's one cut, and now I've just got to go down cutting them all so that they're nice and smooth and fit. I've cut all the fret wires now, and I've fitted one in, but I'm going to have to stick them in because you may remember that when I first started cutting them I wasn't quite sure what was the best tool to cut them with, and the first attempt was with the fret saw, and that groove is just absolutely crap, to be honest. So if I put a fret in, well, it's not that one I'm doing this minute, but if I put one in there, just drops out, no good at all. So I'm going to glue them all in. I've decided to do that. I've glued one in already, and I'm going to use super glue, but I don't want super glue all over here. And what happens is when you try and squeeze the glue out of the tube, it prefers, rather than going in the slot, to go everywhere else on the outside, which I really do want to try and avoid. So what I'm going to do, this is what I did with the last one, is get the masking tape all on the floor. I'm going to put a piece of masking tape at either side of the slot, like so. Voila. Now I'm going to put the super glue in. Then I'm going to drop that in. This one's a little bit tight, I'll just have to give it a bang at one end. And then, well, I'm going to rip this off first. So if I put that in, then when I pull the tape off, it's going to pull it back out again, because the flange at the top of the wire actually goes onto that. So let's get some of this squirted in. Okay, that's in. Rip that off. Whip that off. There's still a bit on there. Put the fret in, being careful not to get it on my fingers, so I glue my finger to the fretboard. Bit of gentle persuasion from the rubber hammer. When I was laying paving stones with this rubber hammer, I never dreamed I'd be using it to make a guitar, but there you go. I'm just going to wipe that surplus glue off. Give it a good press. Make sure it's down fully, and it is, so that's good. So now I can proceed and fit the rest of them in. Up to now I've been working with that piece and that piece glued together, but I've nearly got to the point where I'm ready to sort of sand this down now flat. So last night before I turned in, I decided to stick this piece onto there. Now that's what I've done. I've clamped it up and stuck it. I'll just point out how why I've done it like this. I could have put the clamps directly onto the guitar, but the problem with that is, with it not being a flat surface, when I put the glue on that side and that side, put them together, if I put the clamps on the guitar, as soon as I started to tighten it up, with it not being flat, as I tightened it, it could have pulled this piece out of position because it wasn't tightening it square. So I've used this method instead. I've put one straight piece down either side and put the clamps onto that, and I've just put a little piece of MDF in each place where the wooden battens touch the guitar, just to protect it. Even though it's oak, it probably wouldn't damage it anyway, but just to be on the safe side. So now when I clamp it up like that, as you can see, clamp there and there, it's putting even pressure on, and it's not going to try and twist it. It's just going to clamp it really tight. And so that's been setting overnight. It'll be well dry now and ready to start leveling this off so that all the joints are perfectly flat. I'm using the same clamping idea to fix this onto the workmate, as you can see, with the back down either side, so it's held tight. And now I'm going to sand it down with the belt sander, being careful not to take too much off, because belt sanders can take big chunks out of the wood, so must be careful with this. Notice I'm doing it with the grain, otherwise it could create some nasty scratches which I won't get out. So it's with the grain, and I'm going to keep checking it very often to make sure that I haven't taken too much and that I haven't put any grooves in it. That's got it nice and level with the belt sander. Now I'm going to use the orbital sander with a finer grade grits sandpaper on it to make it smoother. It doesn't matter what way I go with this, I don't have to go down the grain, because this, being the orbital sander, just sands it in a circular motion, not scrapes it that way. The plan is to make this into a two-tone guitar, so I've masked this piece up and on that side and that side are going to be a little bit darker than the centerpiece, which is going to be lighter, which will follow through into the lighter neck, and hopefully it'll turn out okay. So I've masked these up. I'm now going to mask the other side, and then I'm going to apply some stain. I've got the glove on for obvious reasons. Don't really want a brown hand, so I'm going to do that now, and then we'll when I've finished that, I'm going to have to stand it on the end until the stain sets, and then do the edges or whatever, and just play it as I go along, and I have to do it in different phases, of course. So I'll get on with that now. The bodywork's completed now. It's all cut out, stuck together and polished and waxed. So that's looking quite nice, and it's ready for all the metalwork to be fitted now. So there we have the completed guitar. Well, not quite completed, it's all assembled and looking quite nice. But of course, when I put the strings on, I'll probably find out that all the frets are not exactly flat, so I've still got some work to do on it. But hopefully, when it's all sorted, frets flat, tuned in, hopefully it's going to make a nice guitar that will last me a long time. Well, that's finished. I hope you found it as interesting watching as it was making. It was quite a challenge. It's the first guitar I've made from scratch, and it may well be the last. But I do have 2 other kit guitars which I've got to paint and assemble. So although it won't be such hard work, that will be quite fun painting them up. I do like a challenge, and I've certainly set myself one on now. I've just bought a second-hand St. John's ambulance, and I'm going to transfer that into a camper van, I hope. So I'll be making videos of doing that. You might be interested in watching those. I will also be making simpler things that you might want to make yourself. So why not click the button to subscribe, and then you can keep coming back, see what's new, and hopefully enjoy some more videos.